The march towards the east. The Crusades are one of the biggest military operations that took place in the Middle Ages. The areas that are affected by it is so diverse that it's possible to find traces of it from middle of Europe to Middle East. Although the general outcome of the Crusades is not considered successful, one of them is separated from the others, the First Crusade. In this paper, the main focus will be on this particular crusade. The First Crusade has three main themes that the aspects of the incidents took place before, after, and during this military operation are most related to: economical, religious, and social aspects.
War is a costly action. It isn't easy to involve in a war, even in today's world. In order to launch a big campaign like crusades, states had to have a big budget to meet their soldiers' needs. However, it may have been impossible to start crusades without getting helps from women and men in Europe. There was such a collective effort for the first crusades. For instance, these people sacrificed their own interests to help these crusades to happen in Europe. Religion held the essential role in convincing people to give their money for the first crusades. For example, Europeans were really encouraged to help this campaign by Pope Urban's promises about the heaven. Pope Urban claimed that, quote-unquote, whoever for devotion only, not to gain honor or money, goes to Jerusalem to liberate the Church of God can substitute this journey for all penance. Crusades didn't only include rich people, but also they included lots of poor people. Poor people's needs for war were met by rich people by collecting money. The first crusades were characterized individual level fundraising efforts of landed elite. Then this developed into the pool taxation. Therefore, according to some historians, there was a close relationship between the emergence of national taxation and crusades because elites no longer wanted to carry the burden of poor people's needs despite Pope's promises. Also, the dream of being rich played an essential role in the first crusades, and they reached their dreams. According to eyewitnesses, the last stage of the crusades was really profitable, and at Jerusalem, many poor people turned to rich people. Although they were lots of pain for the first crusade, at the end of the first crusade, they managed to improve their economic situation. Also, this situation was beneficial to people waiting for their relatives to come back because many crusaders were rich in relics after the war. There was another First Crusade's profound impact on economy, which was about trade. After the First Crusade, there was a great increase in the trade between East and West in the Mediterranean region after the Roman period because the trade in the region was collapsed with the fall of Rome. New goods such as spices and cotton cloths were introduced to Europe throughout the First Crusades. This increase in trade resulted in the international trade across Mediterranean Sea. For example, Italian states grew rich by transporting the armies and their suppliers. The First Crusades provided Europe with wealth and a good situation in which they improved trade with each other. In brief, the First Crusades changed the economic situation in a good way, but also it may have created a suitable circumstance for taxation.
Another vital aspect and motivation for the First Crusade is religious one. Especially in the 11th century, papacy and the secular kingdoms of Europe formed an alliance that manifested itself in political decision-making and other political affairs. However, this merge between papacy and states of Europe were in clergy's favor. Through this reform of papacy, the Pope Urban II could draw the attention of the armies of the West to set out to two missions: to liberate, quote-unquote, liberate the Jerusalem and help their Greek coreligionists. While the both of these religious objectives of the First Crusade were significant motivations, assisting the Byzantine Empire against the Turks were their priority, according to the modern interpretation of the Crusades. As these were the macro motivations for the agenda of the ruling class, that is to say, papacy, kings, Emperor Alexios, the crusaders of the lower class also needed motivation or reason for this military action. This class also had a religious motivation for the First Crusade, among others. The first and foremost motivation for these people were the mere possibility of a religious redemption and going to heaven, if possible. Pope's Urban speech at the Council of Clermont in 1095 reflects that Pope acknowledged this motivation of the soldiers and played on their affection. Especially this passage showed this. Quote unquote, all who die by the way, whether by land or by the sea, or in battle against the pagans, shall have immediate remission of sins. The religious consequences of the First Crusade can be considered successful as the two objections are achieved. First, the Jerusalem has been retaken, and the second, the political pressure of the Turks has been suspended.
The other aspect of the crusade is the social causes, aims and consequences. Some headings should be mentioned in this regard. For example, non-Christian captives were enslaved during the campaign. Some were put to work in the siege towers in Jerusalem, quote unquote, perhaps a few hundred. And at the bottom of the social hierarchy, paladins occupied a much higher social status, while far above the paladins were large landowners, counts and dukes. The Crusades movement appears to have had the character of a mass migration, and the vast majority of those who set out were poor. The Crusades had a common goal, dream and theology. Due to the danger of being overrun by Muslim Turks, Byzantine Emperor appealed for help in 1095 AD, and Pope Urban II appealed to Christians in the West to help their brothers in the East. Despite this, social groups with sharply different perspectives coexisted. The great princes competed with each other for a dominant leadership position for the rest of the campaign, while the lesser ones tried to prove that they deserved praise and glory. For most soldiers, the main goal was survival, but they also had to engage in some political activity, quote unquote, insisting on a share of the captured booty. If the population had remained completely passive during the Crusades, they would have suffered starvation, massacres, and enslavement on a far greater scale than they did. The Crusades have a special internal dynamic between the social groups that make up them. It was not only papal leadership and spiritual beliefs that distinguished it from other medieval armies. The crusade must be seen as a part of European society on the march. The First Crusade is a great example that allows us to see the impact of common goals and the social consequence of acting together for the Western society. The society came together for many reasons, such as religious, economic, and social, and played a dramatic role in history. In terms of economy, people got richer and trading flourished in Europe. And in religious perspective, the crusade proved that the papacy and religion have some dominant normativity over the Europeans. In this paper, the economical, religious, and social aspect of the First Crusade have been analyzed, for the reason that it is unplausible to reduce all motivations of the crusade to a single dam, such a religious one or none of the others. It has been argued that the main motivation of the crusade is a merged combination of them.